12 went in, one came back. That's not just a number. That's a story screaming to be told. You don't send 12 of your finest into a foreign land without a damn good reason. This wasn't some intelligence exercise or diplomatic visit. These were trained agents, men and women who disappear others for a living, not the ones who vanish themselves. So when 11 of them go dark in a country like India, you have to ask yourself, what were they walking into? Now, some folks will say it's classified. Others might shrug it off as a mission gone wrong, lost in the shuffle of global politics. But you and I both know better. Disappearances like this don't happen without intention. These people weren't amateurs. They were sent there for a purpose, a target, a mission that someone, somewhere, didn't want completed. You see, in the world of espionage, absence is information. A vanishing act is the loudest kind of silence, and in this case, it's screaming across borders. We have to understand the terrain they entered. India isn't just a country. It's a complex theater of alliances, rivalries, and silent power moves. It's not always about missiles or elections. Sometimes it's about something invisible. Tech, surveillance data, biochemical labs, religious tensions. Any one of these could be the fuse. So what were these agents really sent to find, or stop, or perhaps retrieve? And what about the one who returned? We don't know his name. We don't see his face. But we know he didn't come back the same. You ever see someone survive something they weren't meant to? There's a look they carry. Oh wait, because survival, in cases like this, isn't victory. It's punishment. You carry the names of the ones who didn't make it. You carry the questions the world is too afraid to ask. What did he see? Who did he speak to? Why is he silent? I've read stories about survivors like that. They come back to a world that treats them like myths, or worse, liabilities. Sometimes they're protected. More often, they're buried. Not in a grave, but behind layers of deniability, locked doors, and forced silence. And maybe that's what bothers me the most. The idea that there's someone out there, alive, breathing, haunted by a truth he's forbidden to tell. But the truth doesn't stay buried, no matter how deep you dig. You think this is the end of the story just because it's been swept under the rug. No, this is just the first act. Because every missing operative leaves behind a thread, and threads have a way of unraveling bigger things. Networks, betrayals, secret wars waged without public consent. The world doesn't need another conspiracy theory. It needs the courage to look behind the curtain. So when I say 12 went in, one came back, I'm not telling you a mystery, I'm giving you a warning. Somewhere in the quiet corners of global intelligence, someone knows exactly what happened. And the longer we pretend not to ask, the louder that silence becomes, until one day it explodes, because truth may hide, but it never disappears. Disappearance is never an accident. It's a language spoken in secret. People don't just vanish, not like this. Not 11 out of 12 of the most elite operatives from one of the most formidable intelligence agencies on the planet. That's not chance. That's not miscommunication. That's message, and messages like that. They're carved in shadows, meant for the few who know how to read between the lines. When an agent disappears, it's not just a body lost. It's a signal. Someone is letting someone else know. We're watching. We're capable. And we don't need the world to see it happen. It's an art, this kind of silence. A calculated strike, done with such precision that there's nothing left to trace. No blood, no footage, no trail, just void. And that void is louder than any explosion. It terrifies the people who understand what it means. Now take that kind of vanishing act and drop it into a country like India, a rising superpower, balancing diplomacy with one hand and internal complexity with the other. It's not just the location, it's the stage. It's the game board, and you better believe every square on that board is being watched, played, and fought over. India isn't just some side mission. It's central. Between its growing tech influence, its nuclear capacity, its position in Asia, it's a hotbed of potential leverage. Think about it. These agents weren't on vacation. They were there for something urgent, something sensitive, something dangerous. Were they tracking a rogue scientist, monitoring a secret alliance between non-state actors and a hidden faction within a hostile government? Maybe it was an operation to intercept weapons tech, or even a biochemical threat. Whatever it was significant enough to put boots on the ground, not drones, not satellites, people, trained, skilled, disposable, and that's the part that burns. Because when you send operatives into a situation like that, you do it knowing they may not come back. That's the price of intelligence work, but 11 at once. That's not a mission gone sideways. That's a strike, coordinated, clean. Someone knew they were coming. Someone was ready, which means there's a leak, or worse, a setup. So who was playing who? Did India know? Did they assist, resist, or look the other way? Or was it a third party operating in the cracks of both nations' vision? You see, in this business, the enemy's not always wearing a uniform. Sometimes they're shaking your hand, signing your deals, smiling at your press conferences. And while the world watches fireworks, these agents were moving through the smoke, trying to snuff out a spark before it became a wildfire. Now the story's been buried, sanitized, dismissed as unverified. And that's exactly how these things stay hidden, because the more unbelievable it sounds, the easier it is to ignore. But those who disappear don't just vanish. They leave behind questions, patterns, pressure points. And someone somewhere is working overtime to make sure those dots don't connect. But you and I, we see the pattern, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. There's a war being fought behind closed doors, and the cost is measured in ghosts. These aren't accidents. These are decisions, and decisions like this, they echo. The silence isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of something far more dangerous. You don't send your elite into the lion's den unless the stakes are biblical. That's not drama. That's doctrine in the world of espionage. When a country like Israel, with one of the most advanced and lethal intelligence networks on Earth, decides to deploy 12 of its best into foreign territory, it isn't for reconnaissance. It isn't for diplomacy. It's because something big is happening, something that couldn't be stopped by politics, satellites, or back-channel whispers. They went in because whatever they were chasing had the potential to tip scales, break treaties, or ignite wars. India isn't just any theater for this kind of operation. It's layered, deep in history, heavy with strategic value, and riddled with silent fault lines. You've got nuclear capability, cyber warfare infrastructure, multiple intelligence services with overlapping loyalties, and enough regional tension to spark fire with a flicker. So what was so urgent, so threatening, that 12 elite operatives had to be booted on the ground? That's not surveillance, that's intervention. It might have been about technology, stolen algorithms, AI models with military potential, satellite hacking codes. Maybe it was a rogue scientist working on next-gen biological weapons with a sell order on the dark web. Or perhaps it wasn't a thing, but a person, a hive, you asset with critical knowledge, someone they needed to extract or silence before another power got to them. Whatever it was, the decision to send in that kind of firepower means they were chasing a ghost that could shake the pillars of global balance. And don't forget, Israel doesn't take these moves lightly. Every operative represents years of training, millions in resources, and a mind that holds classified knowledge. These are ghosts by profession, phantoms with purpose. If 11 of them vanished without a trace, that's not failure, that's interception. Someone was waiting, someone knew, which means this mission wasn't just high. It was compromised from the start. So now we have to ask the hard questions. Did someone inside give them up? Was it India? Was it another country using Indian soil as bait? Or was it someone inside their own ranks who sold the coordinates? You don't walk into a trap that clean without someone on the inside helping to spring it. That makes this not just a mission gone wrong. It makes it a betrayal. And what was the end game? Was this meant to be a message to Israel? To show them that no matter how untouchable they think their agents are, there are places even they can't penetrate? Or was it meant to prevent the mission from succeeding at any cost? 11 dead or captured or worse. And one comes back. That one wasn't a survivor. He was the delivery mechanism for the warning. We knew you were coming. Don't come again. But missions like this don't just vanish into reports and folders stamped top secret. The ripple effect is real. Governments know. Agencies adjust. Alliances fracture quietly. And civilians stay in the dark, told it's nothing, told it's fiction. But it's not fiction. It's the heist. Takes chess game being played in the smoke, while the rest of us argue over the fire. The lion's den is real. The stakes are real. And someone out there decided that whatever secret was hidden in India was worth risking 12 lives to expose. Or erase. One returned, but he didn't come back the same, and you can feel it, even if you never see his face. You can hear it in the way his silence cuts deeper than any confession. Because survival, in cases like this, doesn't look like triumph, it looks like trauma. The kind that lives in the eyes. The kind that whispers every night, even when the world has moved on. He came back, yes, but something about him didn't make it. 11 others were lost, and he's the lone piece left behind, and that makes him something far more dangerous than a survivor. He's a witness. Now think about what that means. What did he see? What did he survive? What does he know that others don't? Because when missions like this fall apart, missions that were never supposed to exist in the first place, the people who return aren't welcomed back with open arms. They're handled, questioned, contained. Sometimes they're protected, but more often they're monitored, managed, silenced, because the information in their head is too explosive to let walk around unguarded. And let's not forget, this is intelligence work. Trust doesn't run deep here. Even the man who returns becomes a liability. You survived. How? That's the first question. Who let you live? That's the second. Because in the world of espionage, surviving when others didn't is suspicious. Did he cut a deal? Was he spared for a reason? Did he turn? Or was he simply meant to deliver a message? See, in these kinds of disappearances, there's always a narrative waiting to be written. And when only one man comes back, he becomes the narrative, whether he wants to or not. Maybe he saw the ambush happen. Maybe he saw one of their own betray the team. Maybe he knows the faces of the ones who pulled the strings. That makes him dangerous, not to the enemy, but to his own side, because secrets this big don't stay locked up forever. They seep out, and those in power know it. So what do you do with a man like that? A man who's seen too much, lost everything, and still walks the earth like a ticking clock. You isolate him. You keep him in the dark. You make sure that if he ever does talk, he's discredited before the words leave his mouth. And if the truth gets too close to the surface, you bury it again. That's how this world works. Not with headlines, but with shadows. But there's another possibility, the one that haunts people in intelligence circles. What if he didn't just come back damaged, but changed? What if the silence isn't out of fear, but calculation? What if the man who returned isn't the same man who left? That's the kind of question that keeps people up at night. Because silence can be grief, but it can also be strategy. We'll never know the full story. That's the nature of these things. But we know enough to ask the right questions, and we know enough to know when something isn't right. When 12 go in, and only one returns, we don't just owe it to the 11 to ask what happened. We owe it to the one who came back. Because maybe the real story isn't just about what went wrong out there in the field. Maybe the real story is about what came back with him. Truth doesn't vanish, it waits. And when it returns, it demands justice. That's the part people always forget. They think if they bury a story deep enough, flood it with enough denials, drown it in enough silence, it disappears. But truth is not a file. It's not a body. It's not something you can lock away in a cabinet or burn under the weight of national security. It waits, sometimes for years, sometimes for generations, but it always comes back. And when it does, it doesn't ask for permission. It demands accountability. Look at this situation. 11 trained Israeli agents disappeared in India. No footage, no wreckage, no names released to the public. One comes back, quiet, shaken, changed. And then what? Nothing. Not a single press conference. Not a word from official channels. Just a vacuum. You think that's coincidence. No, that's architecture. That's the deliberate building of silence to keep the rest of the world from asking the questions that need to be asked. But people like us, we see through that. We understand that silence isn't the end of the conversation. It's the beginning. Silence means someone is scared. It means someone has something to hide, and the more they push the narrative that nothing happened, the louder that hidden truth becomes. You can feel it under your skin, a quiet tension humming in the background of international relations. That's not paranoia. That's pressure. Because when agents vanish like that, especially agents with the clearance, training, and geopolitical knowledge these operatives had, the consequences ripple. These men and women weren't field grunts. They were experts, each carrying inside them the intelligence that shapes foreign policy, tracks nuclear development, maps terror cells. When they disappeared, it wasn't just a loss. It was a leak, a breach, a fracture in the system. And here's the terrifying part. Whoever made them disappear hasn't claimed responsibility. That's not how this usually works. When covert groups or enemy states carry out something like this, they leave a trace, a clue, a signal. But here, there's nothing. That means we're dealing with an entity that's either beyond the reach of typical detection or is operating within a trusted system. That's the kind of truth that burns through layers of protection and exposes rot at the core. And the world, it keeps turning. Governments continue shaking hands. Diplomats keep smiling for cameras. But beneath that polished exterior, people are sweating. Agencies are quietly rerouting missions. Analysts are digging through intercepted messages, trying to catch a whisper of what went wrong. Because truth, no matter how buried, always has a heartbeat. And when it starts pulsing, the system starts to tremble. We owe it to those agents, not just the 11 who disappeared, but the one who came back, to chase that truth, to ask the hard questions, to keep the story alive, even when every force imaginable tries to kill it. Because in the end, truth is not something you control. It's something you answer to. You don't hide 11 lives forever. And when the truth finally rises, and it will, one will have to stand in its light and explain. 12 went in, 11 vanished, 1 returned, but the story didn't end there. It only went quiet. That's the thing about silence. People mistake it for closure. But silence isn't closure. It's camouflage. And when the noise dies down, when the headlines fade and the public forgets, that's when truth begins to stir. You can cover up operations, you can destroy files, you can even eliminate witnesses, but you can't erase consequences. Because truth may hide, but it never disappears. What happened in India was more than a failed mission. It was a warning, not just to Israel, but to every power that thinks it can operate in the shadows without cost. Someone out there sent a message. 12 agents sent, 11 gone, 1 delivered back as a silent symbol. That wasn't random, that was precision, that was orchestration. Someone wanted to prove a point, that they could see what was supposed to be unseen, stop what was supposed to be unstoppable. Now look at what hasn't happened. There was no retaliation, no international outrage, no coverage on major networks, no leaked audio, no grainy security footage. Think about that. In an age where everything gets recorded, when even the most secret events find their way onto someone's feed, this stayed buried. That tells you how deep it goes. This wasn't just a mission that failed. It was a cover-up that succeeded. And when that happens, you're not looking at a singular act. You're looking at a network, a system, the survivor. What role does he play now? They say he's in isolation. Others say he's disappeared again, not officially, but bureaucratically, buried in paperwork, relocated under a new name. But wherever he is, he's carrying something. Maybe not physical evidence, but the kind of truth that haunts people. The kind that makes leaders nervous and institutions crack. And the more they try to suppress that truth, the louder it will echo when it eventually breaks through. Because truth doesn't vanish, it waits, and it watches. It finds cracks in the wall, flaws in the plan, mistakes in the story. And over time, those mistakes grow. One overlooked document, one whistleblower who's seen too much, one journalist who refuses to let go. And suddenly, what was buried begins to breathe again. And when that happens, it doesn't come back gently. It comes back with force, with weight, with consequences. Careers will fall. Trust will collapse. Entire alliances could fracture. That's the price of silence. Because it's never free. There's always a reckoning waiting just around the corner. And in this case, the reckoning won't just come in the form of justice. For the 11 who vanished, it'll come for those who allowed it to happen. Those who stayed quiet. Those who buried the truth. You can't disappear people forever. You can't erase missions by erasing names. History doesn't forget. It waits for enough courage to dig it up. And when the world is finally ready to ask what happened in India, to open the files, to face the fallout, there will be no more hiding. Because truth, no matter how deep you bury it, always finds its way back to the surface.